But there's not too many 90-year-olds that have a daughter that's getting married.
That's true too.
Fair enough.
Wait, what did you say?
Here my daughter's getting married. I'm already 90 years old.
Zing.
Yeah, that was
Gotta lay that one down.
We'll get you all that
My
time.
daughter's a grandma.
She's gonna be a great grandma.
I'm getting like picked on. Mark needs to be here to help me out.
Nah, he would just laugh.
Yeah.
He would just laugh. He'd probably be cracking his own jokes.
I wish he was here. This would be fun.
You would
For
be
him to see this
having.
crazy
I saw
story.
her back on
I don't know them at all, and I'm not going to answer that while you're recording.
She's recording this damn stuff.
Well, I remember not too long ago, I think you were asking about a tampon.
Morgan, you
Oh
are.
yeah, you still have your period. It's not every
That's what you
month.
just asked.
Oh, do you not want Grandpa to know?
Why? It's like every other month.
I'm not
It's every
gonna
3 months.
Don't you dare publish that stuff.
It's copyrighted.
Oh my God.
I just.
But she took me in. They took me in because my other sister.
were like, I want to live here.
Wait, so you did make it to your sisters? Where your sisters
Well, yeah, it was
were?
across the bridge, and that was just a long way.
Oh,
But
yeah.
where I was at, they were an older couple, and I was going to be the only child there, and I was in high school, and I had my own room, and I remember it was so satiny and pink and red and doodads all over the place, like little figurines, and I had to dust those things every day. And I said, I don't like this. I'm out of
I had
here.
to dust those things.
All the little figurines. She's fussy. She dusts these things every day so there's no dust on them because they're all little, like, she.
It's like how you was like
That's a collection.
have you in there living in there as like a worker? Just like
Yeah, I was like a foster child, so I helped clean the house, and they would get so much money from the state for housing me.
Yeah.
You know.
that's not how it should
Well, my
be.
dad died when I was like 3, and there were 8 of us, and in those days, you went on the state to survive.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
There's no way.
But you know, stories like that is why it's so important, like you were saying. That's why, the problem is that this is when Carter was elected, President Carter. The interest rates went up to 20%. So he had loans all over the place.
Oh no.
He went bankrupt.
Man.
I was out of work.
When
So-
was that?
Huh?
When was that?
That was in the late 70s, just before 2000, because I remember the year, 1980,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not 2000.
Yeah, just before
1980
Reagan, right? Yeah, just
1980
before
is
Reagan.
when I finally found another job. What happened was, let's see, how did that happen? Yeah. When I came back from that trip to the Philippines, that's when I went to work for the LRJ, right? And then when he went bankrupt and stuff, I had a friend who I knew from Boeing, and he was starting up a contract for building an extension airport in Las Vegas, and he needed a assistant project manager. But he says, "But I can't hire you now." I says, "Because we're sort of trying to put this contract together." So we talked about it. I said, "Okay." He says, "I'll stand by." I said, "But I can't stand by too long." He says, "Well, you need some time." So in the meantime, what I did is I went back to Boeing and I tried to interview for the job. So I went back to work with Boeing facilities in Renton. Facilities department, it was just fix the roads and all this crap.
Like a
Crap.
laborer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a bunch of stuff like that, you know. Little subcontracts here and subcontract there. So I worked with them, waiting for this other job to come by, you know. About 6 months later, I went to work for TRA. That's when I started working with on that airport project in Las Vegas.
What does TRA
That's a
stand
view.
for?
I went down there when they had the
Yeah,
open
when
house.
they
I was
had a
invited to
grant-
go
they had a
down
grant.
because he was.
It was really interesting because the architect that was designing the outside of these buildings and stuff like that. You know, he was quite innovative. He's a young man, but very innovative. And so, my job was to coordinate the various activities of contractors and stuff, how it would work. And so I remember one trip I went there with this architect. And he said, let's go out in the desert. He says, I want to get some samples. I said, okay. So we did go out in the desert, and he picked up different rock and stuff, different colored rocks. And so without the purpose of that was when he designed it, he said the concrete, we're going to have the concrete match the local colors.
Wow.
So when we mixed the concrete, they crushed some of that local rock and so that put it in the concrete for the color, so that the building looks like the desert, you know.
It's kind of
cool.
a clay color.
Yeah, it's a clay
Clay
color.
color.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
so that's when you were there?
Sandstone,
It's
actually.
That's,
Yeah.
that's what he
Yeah.
did.
So it was really interesting. And then what she thought about is when we finally finished it, we had a grand opening, and they had at the airport, and they had served cocktails and champagne and everything else, you know. And so they invited all the contractors to come down and we spent a couple days there. That was kind of an interesting
That's a
job.
beautiful airport.
Yeah.
How many years was that job?
That job lasted about, I was with the TRA, even, I stayed on after that contract was finished, about 3 years, something like that. And it took about 3 years to finish it all.
Wow.
Because we were there at the very beginning of the design. That time it was all built and everything and turned over. And then one of the other engineers that was the TRA, he started a separate subsidiary to work with the city of Seattle school system. And they were putting expansion or modifications in many of the Seattle schools and stuff like that. So our job was to organize and design the preliminary design of these various facilities and what changes they were going to put in. You know, some places we had parking lots, some places more classrooms, that kind of stuff. There was about maybe a dozen different schools in the Seattle school.
Wow.
And so that was the advent of the computer. That's our first computer in the company was this one guy, friend of mine. He became that was his job. He was on the computer, and he would run these Excel spreadsheets. And the program was Microsoft. Was it XP? Before XP. It was XP way before Windows, you know.
Right.
And the program was so fast that it would take 6 hours to run through a calculation.
Oh my gosh.
He was also the estimator. So he would estimate the costs and stuff, right? So he could put in his calls and things in the spreadsheet and stuff like that, you know, all the costs of this, that, and he punched the buttons and then run the goddamn program. It would take 6 hours later you get an answer.
Oh my gosh.
But that's where I learned my first computer, okay? Because my boss then at the time, he says, I want everyone in the team. The team was about maybe 10 of us or something like that, small team. So what he did, he took that computer box, you know, and he opened the cover. And he explained to us how it works, what it was, what's the hard drive, this is this, this is that. My first experience at computers was that, you know. But then it was a fight to get it. The secretary had priority on the computer because he had type secretary, right? But here, I've got this other thing I need to do over here, so I need some time on the computer.
Oh, there's only one computer.
Yeah, there's only one computer.
There's only one.
And the thing was so damn slow, you know.
Yeah.
That pointed up to the top of so that you could actually, from inside that workroom, you could put a theater instrument and look north and actually be able to align the position of your missile where you would send it.
Yeah.
And so that was the equipment room was there, and electronic stuff. And they had another level with batteries, you know. And they had so the whole thing was underground. So when you went out there on site, out there in the field and stuff, all you saw is flat slab. That's all it was.
On the ground, but it's all hidden underneath.
Yeah, everything else was underground. But the operating silo, however, where the airmen that control all of these was in a central area. These silos were like this, but here was what they call a. It was built like a submarine. Okay, it was a elliptical hole, like round like this with rounded on the ends like that. It's like a submarine, and that's where the control equipment was located. And this was monitored 24 hours a day, by two airmen all the time.
That was underground too?
That was underground. That was about 30 feet underground.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the door to go into this facility, you went down an elevator and down a shaft like this. And there was this big, like a big safe door, it was about 2 foot thick.
Oh, wow.
And it had these big rods that lock it, And go in there and they lock themselves in. And they have these councils to operate these missiles and stuff. They get,
So was this during the Cold War?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
but that's still operating. It's still there. This site's up there in North Dakota.
That's the only one that's
active.
still there. The others have all been sealed off.
Huh?
The others have all. What did they do with all those? The other ones,
They've destroyed them.
yeah.
They got rid of them all.
That,
It's part of the arrangements that they have with cutting back on atomic weapons and that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
These agreements that Obama came up with. They got rid of all those missiles. They
but now it's going to be nuclear, so it's not really the same. We don't
Says
really.
it
need
with
it.
anger.
Since then, however, the ones that really are more effective than that are the submarine
Oh,
missiles and stuff. They are just much more effective because you can't find them. You don't know where they are. The Minuteman missile up there in North Dakota, the whole world knows exactly where they are. They can send it.
Oh.
That's why they're built to not be destroyed. In fact, one of the programs that we had after we built them, about 4 or 5 years later, I went back on another program where we, what they call, hardened them. And we put an extra thick, another 4 foot of concrete on top of it, built, and made it even harder so that the
can't be sabotaged.
sabotage is a missile strike.
Yeah, I get you.
Interesting.
That was a different experience. The Corps of Engineers was surveying, controlling the contract, and we had to go down to the bottom of the site to put in a theodolite instrument to point it up to make sure that it was facing north at the right place. Because we had these anchors on the wall to support the missile, right? It has to be oriented the right way. So in order to orient it to north, we had an instrument at the top of the hole that pointed down to the bottom of the hole, and you put another instrument down below. So you had to orient to get the proper orientation, right? So in order to do that, I had to go down the bottom of the hole. So how do you get there? There's no ladder, but there's a 50-gallon drum over here at the end of a crane, okay? So you jump in the barrel, jump up, he goes down to the bottom. So you do your work and finish, and then you come up. Okay, I'm done, come on up. So he gets me all the way up to the top, right? Then he comes over to the ground. Then what he does, let's it go. And stops 5 feet from the
And you were on it?
and I was in the barrel.
Oh my
I
god.
didn't know that.
They were playing games,
How did they
I
know?
was a contractor.
They were playing games.
They're
with
playing
you.
games. The crane,
How
they had all
high-
agreed, the crane operator and all that.
How high were you when they started the drum?
Oh, 100 feet up.
Oh my gosh.
He went up higher than what he needed to.
Oh.
So, I mean, he could have gone just clear the top and come over and just drop, right?
Yeah.
No, he just kept on going.
Oh my gosh.
I came out of that thing, I was so mad at him, I run over and called down crane, I gave him my side of my head.
Oh my god.
I was verbal.
I'd be too. I would have crapped my pants. Thought I was gonna die.
Yeah. That was
'Cause I would think, oh, something broke or. I don't
The
know.
worst place to build was in Wyoming on the, it was the eastern part of the state, where Wyoming and Montana and South Dakota come together, right in that area there. You know, in fact, we lived nearby. Yeah, we lived in Belle Fourche, which was about 5 miles from the corner of North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, right there in that corner. And it's what they call the red earth.
Red Earth.
It's red mud. And once you get that stuff wet, it's just, you can't even walk in there. And
Really?
here we are trying to dig foundations in that kind of stuff.
What was it, like mud or something?
It turns to mud. It turns to almost like red soup,
my
tomato
God.
soup.
Oh my gosh.
Bad.
Wow.
The best one was, I think, when we were up in Grafton. We were in Grafton, and that's when we adopted Jennifer. Right? And when we met a couple up there, the local couple, he was a doctor, right? And
No, attorney.
attorney, yeah. In fact, he's the one that got us to complete the adoption for Jennifer.
For Jennifer.
And so we joined with them, and we used to go curling.
That was a big sport up there. You know what curling is?
In Wyoming?
In,
Or
no, this was
Grafton.
in Grafton, North Dakota.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's the sport that they do out there.
Oh, curling. Yes,
Curling.
Yeah,
sorry.
we were up there in the wintertime. We used to go curling. She'd curl on Tuesday nights. I would curl on Thursday night, and we curled a combination
And
on
one time
Sunday.
they spiked the punch.
Oh, yeah.
Did we sweep the whole thing?
Oh my gosh.
Was just trying to keep your balance, or?
No, we're having a good time. Sweep, girl, sweep.
Sweep.
Our local office was located about 15 miles out of town, okay, across the country, from Grafton there, right there in
You want to go play a game?
You can finish your story and then we can go play. Yeah.
and then we used to have a little office, like a trailer office type, and there was a little community. There was a bar, a tavern there, and you had a nice wooden stove. You know, I remember that wooden stove. So one morning we headed out there, and as we were working, we decided we can't go out there today. It started to snow very hard. If we start going out to these sites, and so we're going to get lost out in these sites. So instead of that, we went to the tavern because we lost power. Okay, we went to the tavern, kept warm for a while. After a while, the boss says, "You know, we can't stay here overnight. So let's see if we can go home." I says, "We got three cars over here. Let's go in convoy, one behind the other." So I don't remember if I was leading or somebody else was leading, but over there in North Dakota, they always had their fence on each side of the road for the cattle, right? And so as we were driving down, you couldn't tell where the road was. So that literally, the front guy actually drove off the road. So we ended up helping him back on the road, and we backed into town. I mean, we were about 3 or 4 miles from town. We went back to the tavern to stay warm until the snow cleared.
Oh my
The
gosh.
storms down there are really bad. They're like blizzards.
Oh, yeah.
The snow comes down like a sheet at an angle.
Horizontal.
So you get these drifts, you know.
It was bad.
Well, what keeping you from your game?
Open patio up there, and at night you could see the rocket flight from one side of the country, the other side of
What?
the country. There was one faction here and the other faction there, and shoot at each other.
And
How
you're in the
far
middle.
away?
You're in the middle.
Yeah.
Well,
We're
how
in
far away were
Rwanda.
you?
We're in Rwanda.
You're in Rwanda? Wow.
In Rwanda, yeah,
Oh, Rwanda.
Rwanda.
How far away were you from those rockets?
Oh, they were probably 5 to 10 miles away, you know, that kind of stuff.
Still, it's a
But
little
anyway.
close.
So and in the morning, you go down, you wake up in the morning and you hear this rumble. You know,
Tank.
Tank going down the street.
A cannon?
A tank.
A tank.
A tank going down the street.
Oh my god.
Good morning. It's your wake up call.
We had
God.
one of the sites that we had to put in the antennas and stuff was a big, like a rocky promontory called Cabinda. Cabinda it's a little enclave north of the country, and it belonged to Angola because it was a place where they had oil wells off the coast. So they had oil wells. So one of the things that the Cubans did, they took over that promontory. But that's right there where the military base was, up there in Cabinda, was the place of land where we were going to build our antennas. Right there, the foundation. We're going to put in foundations right there. So we had to take permission of the military, drive up there, you know, and try and put in our foundations and stuff for these antennas. Right there, I had military all the way around there.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
I can remember coming back home on one of these trips, and I sat next to a Cuban military guy that was going back home from Cuba. And I had learned Portuguese because before I took on this assignment, they sent me to school to an instructor in Lingua, is the name of the outfit. And they had Portuguese teachers, right? Teach you Portuguese. The thing is that he was from Brazil. So he taught us,
so
taught us Portuguese.
different type of Portuguese, is that what he's saying?
I had the wrong pronunciation.
Yeah.
But anyway, so coming back on this flight, I was talking in Portuguese to this guy, and he was answering me in Spanish. You know?
Oh my gosh.
We talked back and forth. I could understand enough Spanish because it's close to Portuguese, but the other is not quite the same. You know?
Yeah.
It's funny.
Oh my gosh.
Such adventures, you know.
Did you ever feel unsafe when you were there in
Oh, yeah.
Uganda?
Oh yeah, because we had a good consultant that was taking care of us. He was like on one of those trips out to because the food was very hard to come by because of the war. Okay, so what we did is our boss here in Seattle, they arranged to send a container full of food, and they sent it over there by ship, and they landed it over there on the shore, and we moved it over to a warehouse. So we moved our container into this warehouse. So once a week, we'd have to drive from Rwanda over the outskirts of town to the warehouse to get some food, you know, some beef, canned beef and spam and all, whatever, and bring it back. And then, so we used to have to drive around the country because we did have some work at the airport, so that on one of these times, there was 3 of us in the van, and the driver and the helper. We had our I want to say guide, but the guy that was really taking care of us, you know, making arrangements for the hotels and stuff like that. So the driver is going down the road and entering on the outskirts of the city. There was a lot of people around. You know, there was people on the streets and stuff like that. It was a very busy area. But lo and behold, first thing you know, is some little lady comes running across the street up against the car and hits the car.
Oh.
I mean, she didn't run. He didn't hit her in the front. She came over and hit the car. Well, whoa, you know, you stop. And so our guide said, now you guys lock the doors, stay in here, don't move. So what happened was, that's where they work. This little lady, you know, now you have to pay, repair, you know,
Damages.
take care of her and all that kind of good stuff, you know. They have to make arrangements to, otherwise all the people, they surround the whole damn car. The whole group of people surround the car, you know. And until he went out and made arrangements and stuff, yeah, we're gonna take care of the little lady and all that kind of stuff. And we're finally able to go home. I'm telling you, it's just kind
I
of.
thought they had to take care of her family.
Oh yeah,
Not
it
just
was.
her.
They had to reimburse for her and her family
And
and
they
the whole.
plan to do that
just a
because they're
scam?
desperate.
Just to get
That's
make
how
money
we're
because they're
gonna
so desperate? Is that what you're
taken care
saying?
It's almost like
Wow.
blackmail.
So you don't drive yourself, you always have a driver, right?
No, you never drive.
Yeah.
And that's why you had a driver, because otherwise they'd have come after you. They went after
Yeah.
the driver.
Oh, yeah, come after an American for sure.
Yeah.
You know?
That was a
So
lot of
look-
fun.
Wow.
I think the best one was when I was in Algeria. I told you about Algeria. When I was there, I was there for 4 months, and we were getting close to maybe make an arrangement to build this hangar for the 737. And so I was talking to Jeanne. I says, I said, honey, I said, if we get this contract, I said, I'm going to have you come over here. But what we're going to do is since we have ability to fly back and forth on our airline, is we're going to set you up in
Marseille,
Marseille,
France.
which is right on the Mediterranean there, because they have English schools there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have kids in school over there, and I'll come back on weekends. I'll just fly over, from Marseille to
So
Algeria.
Amy would be speaking French.
Right.
So how come
It's
you
probably a
guys
good
didn't
thing
do
that doesn't happen.
I didn't want to do that. I really want no part of it.
You didn't want
No,
to?
I didn't want any part of it.
Oh.
You didn't get the contract.
You didn't get the contract.
I liked where we were. I didn't want to go in a foreign country.
But
Yeah.
that was the point,
I'm
If I get the contract, I'm
Like,
gonna have
I'm
to
good.
build a
Jennifer would have
facility.
loved it.
How old were they at the time?
Oh, they what, 9, 10?
9, 10-year-old,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, so yeah.
The older ones were
They were
about
in
9,
school.
10, and Amy was 6 years
Yeah.
younger.
Kids are all in school.
Well, I thought, okay, I've got to learn a whole new
Hey,
language.
I said, yeah, just give me 5 dozen eggs. No, he wanted more of that because they needed a whole bunch of guys. So we went back to Lisbon and came back the following week, and I had in the back of the airplane, I had crates of eggs. So when we landed, he says, you come with me. And we drove down this jungle, down to a village. And he says, you wait for me. He came back with about a dozen more little guys, and he gave each one a shovel and a dozen eggs. Build it, and you dig a trench 5 feet long. And we ended up digging the trench all the way along the airport, paying them off for the eggs.
Oh my gosh.
That was a big deal, I guess.
Well, because these local people didn't have any food because the war was going on. They were fighting each other. We at night we had when we first got there, when there was no place to live, we had lived in a hotel. The hotel was about a 6-story hotel, and the top floor was a restaurant. And so whenever you went in the hotel, you go to your room, make sure you go up with a lunch bag. Because as you go up, you don't know if the elevator's gonna go all the way up, because power will go off. You'd be sitting over there for 4 or 5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Bring a lunch to
The Portuguese left